Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 880, August the 27th, 2019, Tuesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, before I get started on the news of the day, I just wanted to mention that there unfortunately will not be a video on Wednesday. Yes, that's right, no video on Wednesday. I have to go, I don't know, in state. I have to go to Canton. And then from there I have to go up to a place called, what's that place called? I forget. It's a tiny little place, but it's up on pretty much right on Lake Michigan. So I'm probably not going to get home tomorrow night to around 9:30 or 10 o'clock, something like that. It's a long drive up there, like 4.5, 5 hours drive up and back. And we're driving, so we should be on a plane, but we're driving. So I won't be back in time to do a video. So anyway, no video on Wednesday, but I will be back with a new video on Thursday. But let's go ahead and get through the deal here. So anyway, we have first up today, we have multiple news sites reporting that federal prosecutors are in the final stages of deciding whether or not to charge Andy McCabe for lying under oath to the feds 3 times. U.S. Attorney Jesse Liu has punted the decision back to Main Justice. That would go back to Deputy A.G. Rosen, and I guess now we'll wait to see what they're going to do. Well, Jesse Liu, you certainly would know that she is not going to do anything. She's, of course, a good friend of the anti-Trumpers, of the deep state, and she's been protecting, obviously, she was in charge of the James Wolfe case, and we know what he got. Nothing. And what he did was pretty bad. She's had other cases there in the last couple years as we've been following the Spygate story. So she's not going to do anything. And so she kicked the case back to Main Justice, and that'll go back to the Deputy Attorney General Rosen. So we will see, because certainly it'll probably most likely will I would assume he would check with A.G. Barr and see what A.G. Barr wants him to do. So it'll be very interesting to see. This is Barr's first major decision as to whether or not to charge one of the deep staters. Now, clearly, if you go on precedent and you say, well, what happened to Papadopoulos? What happened to Flynn? What happened to this lawyer over in the UK? What happened to all these other people that fell under the Mueller probe? What happened to them for failing the memory test? And what McCabe did was he didn't just fail the memory test, he blatantly lied about something he did that he said he did not do. And you also have to ask yourself, what did he lie about? Well, he lied about leaking a story, actually 2 times, leaking 2 stories to a journalist that were primarily designed to cover his butt over a story that was written about the fact that there was these close ties between his wife's campaign that she was running for election, her ties to Terry McAuliffe, lots of money that flowed into her campaign from McAuliffe at the same time that McCabe is in charge of or is involved in the Rotten Reverend Clinton email investigation. So it had a lot of stink around it. And so it's not just like he misremembered a date or something like that. It's he lied 3 times about, and it's what he lied about is far more crucial than anything Papadopoulos or Flynn may have lied about. And in fact, we now know that Flynn may not have lied at all. So yes, it's going to be something we're going to be watching very closely, and I don't know where it's going to go. He certainly should be charged, but he's facing much worse charges than just, lying to the FBI 3 times. That's minimal for Andy McCabe. He was involved in the coup and a lot of other things. Meaning many individual crimes within the overall conspiracy. He was involved in just many things that were all part of a much larger conspiracy. If you wanted to itemize them and list them down a page, it would probably be hundreds of items long of the specific individual things that he did throughout that period of time. Literally on a daily basis, he was breaking the law, violating the U.S. Code. So I understand that there are much larger crimes ahead, but I still don't think that that means you have to let him off here. I mean, you can charge him with lying to the FBI 3 times here, and you can prosecute him, and you can give him, 30 days in jail or 60 days in jail, or, a similar type of, he should get at least what Papadopoulos and Flynn and this other lawyer over in the UK got for lying. He should at the very least get that. That doesn't mean you can't charge him and indict him on all the other things that are under investigation by Mr. Durham. It doesn't mean you can't indict him on those things. Indict him on and this, to me, I mean, it's a no-brainer. I mean, if we have equal justice under the law, then that's what should happen. And I'm kind of getting this feeling that there's this thing going on where it's almost like I kind of started feeling this in the previous decision Barr made. I'm almost getting this feeling that there's going to be this idea of, well, yeah, we believe in equal justice under the law, and we believe in applying the law fairly and evenly, and that's what I'm going to do. But now I can't speak for the things that went on before me. Oh, those things shouldn't have happened. Flynn probably shouldn't have been charged. Papadopoulos probably shouldn't have been charged. Oh, we shouldn't have, probably jailed this lawyer over in the UK for a false statement or what have you. This stuff shouldn't happen. But now that I'm the Attorney General, I'm going to be even and fair about things, and I'm not going to climb all over people for minor little things that they probably shouldn't be charged for. It happened to these people, but I'm not going to do that. You see, this is what I fear more than anything else, because Barr may think, well, I don't want people to make it look like I'm going after people, revenge or anything like that. You see, that's what probably worries me most. And no, I don't expect Barr to go out and just start indicting people right and left just to get back at Mueller or whatever went on before. No, that's not what I expect at all. But I do expect that if they are going to, say that they're going to have equal justice under the law, and you are going to prosecute people when they commit crimes, then you should look at each case individually. And that's exactly. I'm not saying that Barr should compare what he's going to do to McCabe based on what was done to other people under Mueller. I'm not suggesting that. I'm mentioning those things just to point out the fact that that's in fact what did happen. But I'm not saying that should have anything to do with the decision they make on McCabe. The decision they make on McCabe should be based on McCabe's situation. And the situation is that he lied 3 times. And what he lied about was leaking. And specifically about things having to do with the election and these other things. So that's the only thing I'm saying here. So I certainly hope that, we're not going to get that game where Barr is suddenly going to decide that, well, the Justice Department is now going to be, much nicer. We're not going to go after people the way Mueller did. Well, I would probably almost accept that if he indicted Mueller and his entire team tomorrow. If what Mueller did was wrong, and you're not going to do what Mueller did just to prove a point that we're now going to have a nice Department of Justice, and you're not going to do what the other guys did because they're bad. Okay, good. Then if the other guys were bad, then go ahead and let's see you indict them, because Mueller and his team were part of the coup. So if you're not going to indict McCabe because you don't want to be like those guys were, and abusing the authority of the Justice Department, preying on people, so to speak. Okay, if that's the take that you're going to have, then you got to go and you've got to prosecute Mueller and Weissman and that whole team that was part of they're part of the coup, by the way. I think most of you know that. And at this point, I would have to think that Barr and Durham had figured out that Mueller and his Hillary donor posse were just an extension of the original coup plot. They were part of the coup plot. They were part of the insurance policy. And I find it hard to believe that they didn't know it. Certainly Weissman. Now, you could say that Uncle Bob the Executioner was completely delusional and senile and didn't know what the hell he was doing, and they just stuck him in there, and let Weissman run the show. But the fact of the matter is, Mueller was responsible. And that's not our fault. And so he should be held accountable, but certainly Weissman and everyone on down. You know, it's somewhere along the line you got to point out some bad guys. There was a lot of bad guys, and you got to point out who they were. We know who was targeted and set up and framed, and they weren't even bad guys. Flynn wasn't a bad guy, did nothing wrong. Papadopoulos, not a bad guy, did nothing wrong. Carter Page, as far as I can tell, probably not a bad guy, did nothing wrong, but he was never charged. This lawyer over in the UK, you know, I don't know anything about him other than the fact that he also allegedly made false statements. But probably not a bad guy. But the fact of the matter is, Weissman and that whole team, the coup plotters, they are bad guys. And while Uncle Bob may have been senile, you know, and he might be a bad guy, you could say he's not a bad guy. I think he's a bad guy. But, you know, some people are like, oh, he's just old, he didn't know what he's doing. They put him in there, and they used him or whatever. Well, tough. It's not my fault. But something, at some point, needs to happen here. So I'll be watching this very closely to see if McCabe slips off the hook. But he absolutely should get at least the same type of treatment that Papadopoulos and these other people got. So I'll be very, very disappointed if Barr does not charge McCabe. And if I get a bunch of people coming out saying, well, yeah, he decided not to charge McCabe because he's got much bigger things that he's working on for McCabe. Bullshit. He can charge McCabe with these crimes and charge him with the other crimes when he's ready. Lots of people will be in jail, and there'll be some crime that will be discovered that they committed, and they'll be in jail, and they still charge them with the damn crime. They come and get them out of jail and take them right to court. And they just add that on to their sentence. So yes, we're going to be watching very, very closely to see exactly how this turns out. Well, it looks like the Rotten Reverend Clinton, of course, can't keep herself out of anything. She is apparently taking a beating on Twitter today because she was having some, I guess, taking advantage. There was a story, I think it was written in Axios, that Trump wanted to, you know, drop a nuke, you know, into a hurricane to try to blow up the hurricane or something. It's a crazy story. Trump's denied it. I don't think there's anything to it. It's just kind of crazy. And even if he did say it, he'll probably be joking. Clearly, Trump's not interested in dropping a nuke to, you know, blow up a hurricane. It's just crazy. But the Rotten Reverend Clinton couldn't resist tweeting something out. She tweeted out, quote, "We should not nuke hurricanes." Well, that, of course, led to, you can imagine, many, many people responding to her comment. And she took a beating on that comment. Believe me, she took a beating. Some pretty funny comments there on the Rotten Reverend Clinton. Now, let's keep in mind that, in case you haven't heard, the Rotten Reverend Clinton is having a $50,000 a plate fundraiser, and apparently it's at her Washington, D.C. home. I kind of thought they sold the D.C. home, but I guess they still have it. Because I thought that their main home now was in New York, or at least it was Hillary's main home. Slick Willie stays out in Arkansas at the penthouse above the Clinton Library. That's typically where you'll find him. I don't think he and Hillary live together very much. She's usually at her place in New York. But the story was that she's having a $50,000 a plate fundraiser at her place in Washington, D.C. So maybe they still got the place in D.C. Although I didn't even think they owned that. I thought they were like leasing it. Anyway, regardless, the fact is she's having a $50,000 a plate fundraiser. Now, at this point, I'm not aware of the Rotten Reverend Clinton. She's not come out and endorsed anybody, although we do know that a lot of her former staff people were working for Kamala, legs in the air Harris. But she's not come out and endorsed anybody, any way, shape, or form, or even showed any support whatsoever for any of them. And so, of course, as far as we know, she hasn't donated any money to any of them, but she's out raising money like crazy. And here she's having a $50,000 a plate fundraiser, and she's not, you know, endorsed anybody, and she's not, as far as we know, funding anyone's campaign. So you got to ask yourself, why is the Rotten Reverend Clinton doing that? Well, I continue to believe that Biden is not going to be the nominee, and that someone is going to have to jump in and fill his shoes, because I don't think that the corporate donors are going to be satisfied with Bernie or Warren. And that means that someone else would have to jump in the race. And the only two people, I can think of three possibilities. The Rotten Reverend, Bloomberg, because he comes with his own money, and possibly a long shot would be John Kerry. That's the only three I can really think of off the top of my head that could come in and maybe represent the Democratic Party as their nominee in 2020. So we'll have to keep watching, but keep in mind the Right Reverend Clinton having a $50,000 plate fundraiser, and we'll see exactly how that works out. But yeah, she's taking a beating on Twitter for the hurricane comment. Let's see. Well, we have a new Monmouth poll. Speaking of which, we have a new Monmouth poll out today, and it's showing, it's a national poll. It's not taken in New Hampshire or any of these. I think if you take a New Hampshire poll, you'll get a different result maybe, or Iowa poll, you get a different result. But these national polls are a little tricky. I don't pay a lot of attention to them, but it's worth mentioning. So anyway, we have this Monmouth poll, which is a national poll, and it's showing that Sanders and Warren are tied at 20%, tied for first. Warren actually has a slight percentage lead, which would put her 20-point-something% first place, Sanders at 20-point-something% second place, and Biden at 19% third place. Biden does not have any ability, as I've said before. The only way he becomes a nominee is if he can hold the top spot. If he ever falls into second place, he's done, because he has no ability to move up, to climb up. He has no way to climb up. Biden's only hope was that he started really, really high and would lose a little here, a little here, a little here, but be able to hang on to the first primary, maybe win the first primary, or at least place well. A close second place would probably get it done, but he has to do really well in the first 2 to 3 primaries, and he has to be probably the front runner going in to the first primary if he's going to do well. So I don't know. It just looks more and more like, as I've been saying for weeks and weeks and weeks, that Biden's not going to make it. And I guess the funny sideline to this story is that Biden was, literally every day, gaffe after gaffe after gaffe. It never ends. It never ends. Every time this guy opens his mouth, it's major gaffes. So he's at this, at another rally, and not so much a rally, but just he's speaking to a group of, people in New Hampshire. And, of course, the mooch is there. Scaramucci. Boy, you talk about saddling up your horse to a loser. Why would the mooch want to jump on the Biden train? He's got to be nuts. But speaking of nuts, Biden is literally addressing this group of people in New Hampshire, and he says, hey, and by the way, let me make one thing perfectly clear. I'm not going nuts. This guy is getting, I don't know who Biden's advisors are, but they're giving him horrible advice, because this is something they should have told him. Whatever you do, there's a lot of people talking about, your memory, a lot of people talking about you being crazy or getting too old or whatever you do not talk about that. Avoid that. And certainly what you don't do is go out and say, hey, everybody says I'm nuts. Hey, I'm not going nuts. It's just, you don't talk about it. You don't bring it up. It's a loser. It's a loser. It's just bad politics. It doesn't work. But that's exactly what he did. Not only that, he was speaking to that same group, and he said something about, to some girl who was there, a college student who was there. He said, yeah, you should thank your mom and dad for sending you to, forking out the money to send you to this private school, this private college, at which point she responded back to Biden, well, actually, it's a public. This is a public university. So, this guy is just so, it's like no one gives him the note card. He doesn't, it's like you're supposed to be given some notes on a note card saying, okay, you're going to be going here and be talking to this group of people. Here's what's popular in this town. Here's like things that these people know or locals know. This is what they, here's what's going on with this local community. Here's some things you want to familiarize yourself with. You're supposed to kind of get that stuff when you're going into these small towns and campaigning around New Hampshire, Iowa, things like that. He should know this by now because he's been doing this for a long time. This stuff he should already know. But it's almost like whoever is coaching Biden or his campaign staff, it's almost like they're working for Hillary. Maybe they are. Maybe it's Hillary's. Maybe Hillary put together Biden's campaign staff to sink him, because something's going on here. Nobody could possibly be getting this much bad advice day after day after day. Either he's getting really bad advice from the people he's paying, or else he's getting good advice and he simply isn't taking it. He's ignoring what he's being told. I don't know. One of the two things are going on here. One of the two things are happening. But it would not surprise me at all to find out that the rotten Reverend Clinton is the one who put together his campaign team. And they're actually working for her to take him out. That would actually figure exactly into exactly how the rotten Reverend Clinton would do business. And it wouldn't surprise me at all to find that out. But anyway, it's just that Biden's the gaff that keeps on gaffing. And I continue to say every day on my videos, I don't think he's going to make it. I really don't. We're also getting word. There was a story actually that was done on, I think it was American Spectator, and it was picked up by some other places on the internet, where they're talking to a couple of campaign, not top tier campaign people, but it's kind of mid-level campaign people who are in contact with the DNC and the DCCC, and it looks like what they're planning on in 2020 for the Democrats is to run the nastiest race in history. The nastiest race in history. They're going to go low. They're going to go real low. Well, I'll tell you what. They better think twice. We saw what happened to those Republicans when they turned on Trump in the primaries and they tried to go low. You can't go lower than Trump. First of all, because Trump is so thick-skinned in a way. I mean, he's thin-skinned in the sense that, if you hit him, he hits you back twice as hard. But he's thick-skinned in the sense that he can take it. He'll hit you back, but he won't shy away from you. He's obviously he can take a lot of heat, is what I'm saying. He can take a lot of heat. Look how much heat he takes, and it doesn't throw him off his game. He'll come back at you and bite your head off or hit you with an even worse line, but you will not knock him off his game. That's the thing. And that's what you do when you go low. You're trying to knock somebody off their game and make them get angry, make them say something stupid, just get them off their game and make them look bad. You're not going to rattle Trump into him saying or doing something really crazy because you pissed him off by saying something about him personal or whatever. It's not going to work. Now, Elizabeth Warren, on the other hand, she is the one person who gets totally triggered if you say something personal about her, and she is the type that could go real wacky and say something crazy. Bernie Sanders, I don't think is going to be the issue because I don't think he's going to be the nominee. But Trump would wipe the floor with Bernie Sanders anyway, just on economic debate, trade debate, and everything else. And Biden, of course, is helpless. I mean, he's completely helpless. If they try to put Biden out there, I mean, if he survives and they try to tell Biden, yeah, you're going to have to go dirty against Trump, you're going to have to go right at him, right with him, toe-to-toe, oh my God, that will just be, no. That's a worse thing you could advise Biden to do. There's no way. That's Trump's game, okay? If you're going to go in there and try to beat Trump at his own game, you better be really good at it, and I don't see anybody in the Democratic field who can touch Trump. If you want to go low against him, you better have serious game, and there's nobody I can see in the Democratic field, and especially Biden would be the worst person in the world that you want to tell to try to employ that strategy against Trump. Trump will just destroy him. So we'll see. I don't think it's going to work out. I don't think it's going to work out. Plus, another thing is, these people are running to be the president. Trump is the president, and he's got a record. And the fact is, the only way to beat an incumbent president is to go after his record. You got to go after the record. If it's open election and neither person has served as president, you go after each other in this way. But if you're going after an incumbent, the only way you beat an incumbent is to beat him on his record, because that's what he's running on. He's going to run on how good his record is, and you got to try to say it's bad. I mean, that's how you lose or win to an incumbent. So they're approaching this as if it's like an open election. So the Democrats are effed up, man. That's all I got to say. They're in bad shape. Of course, we now have this idiot Joe Walsh we talked about the other day, who's wanting to primary Trump. So he's going to be all over CNN, MSNBC. They'll be writing stories about him. He's going to get all sorts of help from the media. It's not going to help him though. I mean, he's going to get plastered. It's not even, it's not even worth hardly talking about, other than the fact that it points out what a nut this guy is. And of course, he shows up on MSNBC, and the host on the show is saying, hey, we've looked at your Twitter account, and there's a lot of things in there, some things that sound pretty racist. You even drop the N-word on occasion. And so he admits, oh yeah, well, I admit that I have dropped the N-word, and I admit that I have said some racist things, but I'm not a racist. So here's the guy that they think is going to beat Trump, and the number one thing they're going to try to go after him on is the fact that he's a racist. And who's the guy that they try to get to go after Trump, to challenge him? A guy who actually does drop the N-word on Twitter. A guy who actually sits right there and says, yeah, well, I say racist things, but I'm not a racist. God. Oh, my God. Oh, man. This is how bad it is. This is how bad it is. And not to be outdone, we have this nutcase shrink. I don't know how many of you saw a clip of this, but this nutcase shrink goes on CNN, the commie news network, with that moron, Brian Stelter. He's just bad. I mean, that guy, I don't know how in the world did that guy get a spot on CNN, but I mean, you could go to any city in this country and just grab any news anchor from the 6 o'clock local news, and he would be far more credible, intelligent, or what have you, more professional than Stelter. How the hell did Stelter? I mean, does his parents know somebody that owns the network, or somebody had to do something to get Stelter a job there at CNN. The guy's just horrible. But anyway, it's Stelter, and he's got this nutcase shrink on his show, and this guy says that Trump may be responsible for more deaths than Stalin, Mao, and Hitler. You believe this? This is how crazy it is. No wonder if CNN's down to 500,000, one of their best shows, 500,000 viewers or something. And keep in mind, they have their TVs. CNN is they got a contract with all the airports and bus stations and places around the world. I wonder how many people actually tune in to CNN, like Americans, like people, regular people. I bet it's got to be 50,000 or something. It's horrendous, and it's for crap like this. Now, this shouldn't happen. This should get you an FCC fine right here, and Stelter should be kicked off the air for tolerating that comment. He says nothing. The guy says this, and Stelter's like, yeah, you can't let that happen. Louisiana Republican, there's MSNBC is going after a Republican who's running in Louisiana, and the big headline and the big news story, this is on MSNBC, they're going after this Louisiana Republican because he's making these incendiary comments saying that there's only two genders. Yes, saying that there's only two genders is now considered a major news story, and it's an incendiary comment. Well, let me tell you something, my friends. There's only two genders, okay? Two sexes, male and female. That's it. That's it. Man, what... I'm serious. I joke about things a lot, but we better seriously we better back up and seriously take a look at what's going on in this damn country. Because, that's bad. It's getting pretty bad, okay? Okay, so a couple of videos ago, I should say, I did a video where I went through all the frame-ups and setups and that type of thing. And I said at the time, I said, these are the ones that we know about. I said there's probably at least this many that we don't know about, attempted setups that just didn't work out. There's probably at least 2 or 3 to 1 that didn't work out based on the ones we know that did and that I pointed out. Well, here's another one that I did not cover that we're somewhat familiar with. We've talked about this person before, Felix Sater. Now, there's a pretty good story by Larry Johnson on the Gateway Pundit. And he's going through the Mueller report, and he's looking at the accusation, the part of the Mueller report that's talking about Trump wanting to do a deal to build Trump Tower. And, of course, that's where Felix Sater comes in, because Felix Sater was the key player in that, along with Michael Cohen. And so it appears that this was another attempted frame-up of Trump that didn't pan out. It didn't pan out, but it did make its way into the Mueller report. Now, there's a lot going on with the story, with the background mainly so much. It's not so much the story, it's the background of it. So I recommend you maybe go over to Gateway Pundit and read the story by Larry Johnson. And there's a couple links within the story for even more background if you want to get in deep to it. But essentially, what happened here was, of course, Felix Sater was a longtime friend of Michael Cohen. Both Cohen and Sater are very similar type of individuals. They try to latch on or attach themselves to wealthy, successful people, hoping that they can skim a little off the top. This is pretty much what Cohen and Sater both do. And they both try to meddle around in some real estate, stuff like that. And this is where the whole Build a Trump Tower in Moscow thing came from. It was totally a Felix Sater and Michael Cohen venture that was designed for them both to be able to skim a few mil off the top by hooking up Trump with the Trump Tower in Moscow. But if you read the Mueller report, Weissman tries to make it a big deal and tries to make it sound like there were high-level Kremlin connections involved in this type of thing, when in fact none of this is true. None of it was ever proven true. This thing was nothing more than Sater and Cohen. There were no high-level Russian officials, and now there's even evidence that even the person that Michael Cohen tried to talk to in Russia even responded back to him and said, we're the government. We don't do private real estate projects. So, I don't know, talk to some private business people. But, the government doesn't deal in private, real estate projects with American billionaires, okay? So, anyway, the whole thing got totally blown off by the Russian government. That's not something they even had any interest in. Trump wasn't all that interested. Too much downside. He looked at it and just pretty much rejected it. But Sater and Cohen were really pushing it. And, of course, we know about their close relationship. But also keep in mind that Sater was a criminal himself. And he got caught up in something. And back in 1998, he became an FBI snitch. They got to him, and he decided to turn on his criminal friends and become a snitch. And he's been a snitch for the FBI ever since. And it was Weissman, Andrew Weisass, who signed him up to be a snitch back in 1998. And the thing is, now keep in mind, Sater was also donated to the Clintons. There's several photos of Sater with Bill Clinton. And I'm not suggesting Bill Clinton was a friend, so much a friend of Sater's. I don't think they hung out. I just think Sater is a guy that would try to, expose himself to as many rich, famous people as he could and hang around in these circles. So probably more like he was just like a clinger on to Clinton. So I'm not suggesting Clinton was personally involved in this. But anyhow, Mueller does not say, in the Mueller report, does not say anything about the fact. He doesn't talk about Weissman's relationship with him. He doesn't talk about the fact that he doesn't even mention anywhere in there that he was an FBI snitch, FBI informant. Says nothing about it. But the most important thing here is the timing about when they put Sater into action. Because this plot, that they had started talking about this in 2013, 2012, 2014, and it had gone away. Trump had no interest. But all of a sudden, in September of 2015, Sater re-engages with Cohen. Re-engages on the Trump Tower project. September 2015, again, a lot of things happening in September, October of 2015. So it just, again, it fits right into the timeline, and you can see that the thing with Sater was most likely another attempted frame-up that just didn't fly. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back with you again on Thursday. You guys have a good night. See ya. Bye.